important of exploring and the opportunities and the problems that are there. The challenge season 10. So I would like to welcome all of you to this. Today we start Sivam Krish, CEO Go Micro with us to conduct this session today. Hello, Sivam.
You have to let me share the screen. I can't on my video.
Okay. No problem. So to give some information to the participants until Sivam get ready with the presentation, we are conducting this on webinar mode. So we will be initially doing a small presentation and then we will open it up for question and answers. So at the end, when we have a question and we will be able to unmute you and then you can ask your questions.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, hello everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we can start. Can we? Or
Yes, we can start, Siva.
okay. Sorry, எல்லாருக்கும் ஒரு வணக்கம். Welcome everybody. We are going to do, I think this is the first presentation on connecting with people who are in various things. So, Aparna, you got to let me share the screen so I can share my presentation.
Now you should be able to share, Siva.
Okay, got it. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So I just want to start with what happened to agriculture in Sri Lanka from a historical perspective. So in the 4th century BC, there was a Tamil saying, "Uludundu Valvar." If I translate that into English, those who plow and eat their food truly live. The rest been subservient, eating what they give. So what this meant was agriculture was number one, top priority. it was the best profession in the 4th century BC. So let's see what happened to it. I'm not sure if you all know this. This is the Parakrama Bahu, Parakrama Samudra. So Sri Lankan civilization was built on agtech. There was this king called Parakrama Bahu who essentially created an entire irrigation system, which was developing before that, but he managed to irrigate the land so the production was doubled. This was one of the best agricultural technologies of the time, and Sri Lanka benefited from it. And this was a big technological breakthrough at that time. So there was agtech before, well, before we call it now. So what happened after the British came, they tried to help the farmers by having, district officers and extension officers. But that system today remains incredibly inefficient. So for example, the agricultural extension reaches less than 1% of farmers in Sri Lanka. And in countries like Africa, the ratio between farmers and agronomists is 1:13,000. So there was the beginnings of a system to help farmers increase their knowledge and support them in agriculture, which the colonial government started, which has become completely dysfunctional and ineffective. Before the colonial period, the most lucrative jobs were farming jobs. So you had a farm, you made money. But colonialism created a second layer, and this was the layer of clerks, of people who were serving the colonial government in Sri Lanka and also outside. And everybody wanted to be a clerk. So those were the hot jobs. So people gave up farming to move on to, or aspired to, clerical jobs. And today, farming is really one of the worst jobs, particularly if you're a subsistence farmer. There's global warming, there's water shortage, there are diseases and pandemics sweeping the agricultural world because of travel and so on. And there are things like fertilizer ban, which come for no reason. So subsistence farmer is not a good job today. It's amongst the worst. It's survival jobs. Now in countries like Australia, things are quite different. This is an Australian farmer. Each farmer in this country is able to create food for 707 people. The average farm sizes are big. And there's a lot of technology being used. And the people who are doing farming are really interested in what they do. You can see this farmer, he's so fascinated by the orange and he knows everything about it. All these trees have water sensors. They're very interested in using technology and very good at it. And farms are managed with a lot of technology and with a lot of efficiency by a small number of people who are able to feed a very large population and also export food. So this is what is happening in the developed world. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of skills, and people who are doing it are very often interested and excited, and they're very skillful. And they use the best of science and technology and universities and research institutions to grow food. And they grow it really efficiently. Now, if you look at this is the pricing from a supermarket here. I have put the pricing in Sri Lanka, if you translate that into Sri Lankan rupees, and I have taken the pricing from John Keel's today and I compared the prices. So a good number of vegetables in Sri Lanka are actually more expensive than in Australia. So this is an important thing to realize, that farming in Asia is actually very inefficient and very costly. And it's cheaper to import food now. And there are many reasons for that. Primarily because our educated people don't connect to farmers at all. Because as I've explained before, the aspiration is to be a clerk, is to work for the government. There's a saying in Tamil, right? So we have separated our subsistence farmers from society, and they are just looking for government jobs, right? And we're now in the second wave. Then of course you have programmers and you have other stuff, but you are creating the next layer that doesn't connect to the bottom layer, and this is one of the problems in developing countries. So for those students here who want to continue those things, of course you have big data in agriculture, you have climate science, you have Internet of Things. There are a lot of things related to agriculture, but they don't really help or benefit, or they are disconnected. And that is one of the challenges that we have. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. If you want a good career, this is what you should do. But the question is, does it really connect, is the question. So on the other hand, if you're really interested in the science of all this, right? A plant is an incredibly complicated thing, and it has inputs. You have to have money to essentially buy seeds, rent the land, then you have to input labor, you have chemicals, you have fertilizer, you have to put water, you have to have seed. And then the plant buries some carbon, now that's being monetized, and it has an output, right? So it's a very interesting engineering problem. It has input and output. And the efficiency of farming depends on the cost of the input and what you get out of that, right? So you can see that in Australia, the input costs are going down, right? And the output is increasing. So the difference is the profit, right? The profit is the difference between input cost and output cost. So in countries like Sri Lanka, the input costs are also going up, right? Because all the imported fertilizers applied badly, inefficiently, without knowledge, right? And the output is not that great. So that is why the prices are high, right? And it is a knowledge about agriculture that actually separates the input cost from the output cost. So from a business point of view, agriculture, like any business, has an input cost and output cost. And if you have smart use of inputs and correctly matched use of input, and if you understand the plant biology and everything, then your output is high. So all this is not understood this way. I mean, farmers understand this generally, but this is not the way it's modeled in generally. And I think we have to start understanding this if you want farming to be profitable. So the interesting thing is 80% of the world's food is created by these farmers, small subsistence farmers. They produce 80% of the world's food, right? Many of them have no formal education. They have virtually no agronomy support. Right? There's a lot of market uncertainty. Then of course, there's global warming, there's agricultural pandemics, and there's growing water shortages, right? So if you're doing something in AgTech or want to do something in AgTech, you got to be able to work in this kind of environment. If you're working with this sector, if you're buying and selling stuff, it's a different matter, right? So it's a very tough and difficult area. So those who want to get to AgTech, you should look at this and maybe be discouraged because it is hard, right? And success is not guaranteed at all. But on the other hand, this is where the bulk of the food is produced. So that's where the challenge is. So if you look at what's happening in the world today, India and China are not really that fantastic in terms of producing food. But a couple of thousand years ago, they were the most powerful economies of the world. And what's happening now is that the world is coming back to what it was. China and India are going to be very, very dominant economies, right? And things are happening in China and India that are in agriculture that are really, really amazing. Incredible things are happening in China, and they are going to be the powers of the world. The most dynamic part of the world is Southeast Asia. This region is the most dynamic part of the world. In many ways, it is related to the conditions in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, people in Sri Lanka, agencies, some startups, they're all kind of hallucinating. They think they are hub, they're thinking they're center of the world, when they're absolutely important to understand Sri Lanka is nothing. It's not a competitive place to do anything. But around Sri Lanka is a very, very dynamic region. And as far as subsistence farming is concerned, it was a huge market because a large part of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So together, it constituted a huge market, but Sri Lanka is just simply not in the game. So to think of Sri Lanka as a hub, I don't know what to say to those people. They should really rethink what they are thinking. Across the Pork Strait is India. And what's happening in India is just absolutely amazing. 600 agtech startups, huge investments in agri technologies, and the amount of incubation centers for agriculture is breathtaking. And all these are very often connected with departments of agriculture, connected with the government of India. And India is moving in an incredible way, nurturing hundreds and hundreds of startups. And it's going to be a powerhouse for agricultural technology for sure. So I would seriously suggest that you look at Indian startups. Not all of them are doing clever things because, as you know, India is a big market. So you don't really have to do anything clever. If you just deliver food efficiently, you're a couple of $1 million company. So why do you want to do anything clever? But there are also very clever companies at the same time. So I think we have to have a right sense of where the technologies are developing and how this is going to transform the world. And of course, Indian companies also have a presence in other parts of the world. And the sheer number and the sheer talent and the sheer funding available in India is really going to make a huge difference in the decades to come. It already has started. So if you look at the ag tech opportunities of India, you might get a glimpse of what the opportunities in Sri Lanka are. So the Indian market, agricultural market, is 276 billion. Sri Lanka's market is 6.2 billion. So I think the ratio is something like 44:1. But I think the problems and the opportunities are somewhat similar. So a lot of the startups are focusing on, how do you sell inputs to farmers, right? That's a 1.7 billion market in India. How do you, because getting farmers buy all these inputs, right? It's part of the production cost. So selling that, advising that is a huge market opportunity. Then, of course, for efficient cropping, weather, water, transportation, all these things are also, the infrastructure is not very developed in India. So that's a 3.7 billion industry. So in Sri Lankan terms, I have just divided by 44, and it's a $77 million space. Then quality assessment, traceability, knowing where agricultural products come from, that's a $3 billion market. Then of course, there's a lot of food loss after you plucking, after you harvest, and that's a $12 billion market. And then of course, farmers buy seeds, they need money, it's lending and banking arrangement, that's about $4 billion. So roughly, I think the opportunities in Sri Lanka are also like this. They can be grouped like this. And this is still a sizable market opportunity in Sri Lanka to develop solutions for those sectors. So if we look at what's happening to this 80% of food production, the problem for startups is that the subsistence farmer earns very little, right? So if you acquire a farmer as a customer, for the entire lifetime of the farmer, you'll only get a few dollars. But cost of getting that farmer is actually quite high because you have to have people talking to them, you have to have distribution, you have to have a lot of work. So you spend a lot to acquire a farmer and their value is very low. So business models don't work. So India is seeing a lot of failure in this sector. So it is a very, very hard to create any viable business for subsistence farmers. On the other hand, on top of, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of money going into agriculture. There's a lot of labor, fertilizer, pesticide, water, seeds, and output. And there's a lot of activities that's happening, but it is very difficult to reach the farmer. What's happening right now is there are all these new technologies, credit cards, cell phone, cloud, satellite imagery, drone imagery, tractor hire, and, equipment hire, and artificial intelligence. These are technologies that are beginning to affect and change how these farmers interact with this input and output things. And there are interesting opportunities there, but they all have to take into account that farmers will never be able to pay. And you can't. So they all have to have business models that somehow are successful in this context. And that is one of the hardest problems in agtech when you're dealing with subsistence farmers. Any questions?
Participants, if you have any questions, you can raise your hands. We may be able to unmute you and then you can ask, or please post the question on the chat. Either way, it's fine. Looks like there aren't any questions up to this. Yeah.
Right. So I'll continue. Okay, so I just want to share 3 interesting examples in this space. So I don't know if you all have heard of this company, Pinduoduo. It's worth 145 billion worth of farm produce is being sold by this company. And this company sells, so China, like India after Mao, has small farms, subsistence farmers. They are selling the products of subsistence farmers. This is now the world's largest online grocery with 731 million users. And the guy who founded this is richer than Jack Ma. Jack Ma is the founder of Alibaba. So here is an example of a successful ag business company whose base is subsistence farming. They've done some very, very clever things with the app. They have gamified the purchasing part, so they're very good at app development. They're very good at AI. They have sorted out the supply chain problem. How do you buy from farmers? And China has incredible, logistics systems and deliver it to the end customer. So the world's largest e-grocery is based on the products of subsistence farmers. China is almost there in terms of being the world leader in AI. And this company also runs an AI competition where they have greenhouses and different schools, universities, and companies from all over the world compete in this competition. They have a row of strawberries and they can control the water, the humidity, the light, and so on. So this is a fully automated strawberry farm competition run by Pinduoduo. And in average, they managed to produce 196% more, almost double of what the normal average strawberry farmer produces using artificial intelligence. So China is now a tech giant, and it's moving in a very, very, very interesting direction with a lot of technology and a lot of things that is going to help small farmers. So I think this is one of the most interesting, or shall I say, successful agtech ventures. I won't be surprised if you will be buying in Sri Lanka vegetables from Pinduoduo soon. Okay, another company. This is a German company which is incredible, called Plantix. They have 10 million users, and they have 1 million monthly users. And what this does is it uses artificial intelligence to detect pests and plant disease. And 15 to 30% of crop loss is due to disease. And the huge success of this is primarily due to peer-to-peer support. That is, farmers advising other farmers on crop problems. The artificial intelligence is there in the background. But the main advantage to farmers is just farmers being able to talk to other farmers through this app is what makes it really popular and makes it very useful. Then there's another company based in Thailand, which I really, really like. It's called Listen Field. And what happens to a lot of agronomy companies is they are run by engineers. Engineers don't really understand agriculture. Right? They know IoT, they know satellite data, they know all that stuff, but they don't understand plants. So if you don't understand plants and if you don't have an agronomy understanding, you can't really help or support agriculture. Because it just becomes a tech game. So this company is founded by somebody who understands agriculture. And she has built this company to support subsistence farmers in Thailand. I think Thailand is one of the world's largest producer of rice, with the help of the Japanese government. So they do different breeding. They have a very comprehensive set of things that will finally help, because just by doing IoT or weather or satellite, you're not going to be able to help anybody. But if you have a comprehensive, a very thorough framework of understanding what happens in a farm, what farmers need, then you can actually increase their yield. And this is a company to watch for. And of course, there's my company called Go Micro, but I'm not going to talk about it. This is about a general introduction to AI. But if you're interested in what we do, you can always follow us on LinkedIn, Go Micro CEO. We do a lot of interesting stuff. Okay, the floor is now open to questions. I hope you'll have a lot of questions.
Participants, either you can raise hand or post your question on the chat so that we will be able to answer those.
இங்கிலீஷ்ல கஷ்டம்னா தமிழ்ல கேளுங்க, I can answer. So I was talking about the failure in agriculture. The failure in our education is our students don't ask questions. They just consume stuff that is poured into them, and that is really sad. So I would appreciate if you ask some questions, because then there's some hope for you all and for agriculture. Okay, yeah, Ilango has asked a question for the listeners in this call. So this was organized by YAL IT. YAL IT is doing a terrific job trying to build entrepreneurship in the North and East, particularly. And this is to make them aware of what's happening in the world in AgTech, so that perhaps encourage them to start their own AgTech ventures. So I think that is the purpose as I understand it. So Aparna, it looks like there are no other questions.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a comment from Ilango saying North or East have great fertile land, need to start thinking about how to get more benefits.
Okay, so I actually disagree with that comment, because agriculture is no longer about fertile land, it's about fertile minds. And the point that I want to make is that the North and East does not have a fertile mind, because the North and East, as I explained before, has a clerical mind. It's all about getting those jobs and not connecting with what is actually the North and East and its potential. So having fertile land is actually not very helpful, is not a huge boon. A fertile mind is, an open mind is. And of course, a willingness to ask, to learn, perhaps ask questions. Those are the things that I think give hope to an economy and people who do things.
So looks like there are no more questions. So yeah, so I think then if there are no more questions, we can wind up. So any last point that you would like to say, Siva? Any closing points?
No, I think, as you know, Aparna, we've, as we have discussed this before, I think agriculture is becoming a tech industry. And I agree with Ilango, and not particularly on the fertility of the land, but the North and East has a lot of agricultural and aquaculture potential. But for that to happen, the younger generation whom we are talking to, who should be asking questions now, need to be connected to what's actually happening in the world. And that connection is not going to come through the universities. It's not going to come through what is there It's going to come through their own understanding of the world. And thanks to the internet, you can find out what's happening in the world. You can find out what's happening in India. You can find out what's happening in China. You can find out pretty much everything that I can find out. And I think if the next generation of students start thinking that way and stop thinking about jobs and sitting behind a desk and getting some certificate and think about the problems that the farmers can have and think about making money, right? Then I think there's a huge potential and future. But I think the main problem in the North and East, I think, is the mindset rather than anything else. So that's my view.
All right.
Anyway, so I hope this talk will encourage them to just look outside. You don't have to believe what I say. Just look outside and learn what's happening, and make use of the best things that you have access to, which is knowledge, and knowledge is now freely available for those who want to make use of it.
Yes, thank you so much, Sivam. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing the insights with related to agri-tech. We hope our listeners here today and all those who are watching this live on Facebook will look at the opportunities that you pointed out to and start building or start taking those problems and finding solution to those. And thank you everyone for joining here today to listen to Sivam, the CEO of Go Micro, who have been supporting us with a lot of other initiatives as well, who conducted this session here today. So thank you everyone for joining and listening to this session, and we hope to see you all in the future as well. Thank you.
Thanks.